Since we started talking about the psychotic signs in Quran in our Facebook page, Muslim fanatics started casting doubt on the ability to diagnose someone who died hundreds of years ago. So, is it possible scientifically to diagnose someone so remote in time and space? The answer is yes. We can do that to a reasonable degree of accuracy if we have sufficient records of his speech and actions. In fact, physical examination is not essential in psychiatry. Diagnosis is based on several criteria obtained mainly by taking history. And in case of Mohammed, we have enough of his speech and behavior saved in Quran, Sirah and Hadith. We depend mainly on the Quran. Therefore, let us here explore the diagnosis of Mohammed according to his Quranic verses and life history. Muslim priests usually argue that if he is psychotic, how could he establish such a state and religion? The answer is that this is possible. He is psychotic. The diagnosis of Mohammed is delusional disorder. And people with delusional disorders can lead remarkable lives. As opposed to schizophrenia, delusional disorder is not marked by deterioration in socio-occupational functioning. The patient can be a leader, a warrior, and a successful professional, etc. Delusional disorder ICD-10 code is F22. The main criteria according to DSM-5 are as follows. A. The presence of one or more delusions with a duration of 1 month or longer. B. Criterion A for schizophrenia has never been met. Note, hallucinations, if present, are not prominent and are related to the delusional theme, example, the sensation of being infested with insects associated with delusions of infestation. C. Apart from the impact of the delusions, or its ramifications, functioning is not markedly impaired, and behavior is not obviously bizarre or odd. D. If manic or major depressive episodes have occurred, these have been brief relative to the duration of the delusional periods. E. The disturbance is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance or another medical condition, and is not better explained by another mental disorder, such as body dysmorphic disorder or obsessive-compulsive disorder. Delusions are defined as fixed beliefs that not amenable to change despite the lack of evidence or even against the contradictory evidence. Their content may include a variety of themes, example, persecutory, referential, somatic, religious, grandiose. Persecutory delusions, namely, belief that one is going to be harmed, harassed, and so forth by an individual, organization, or other group, are most common. Referential delusions, namely, belief that certain gestures, comments, environmental cues, and so forth are directed at oneself, are also common. Grandiose delusions, namely, when an individual believes that he or she has exceptional abilities, wealth, or fame. Delusions are deemed bizarre if they are clearly implausible and not understandable to same culture peers, and do not derive from ordinary life experiences. Hallucinations are perception-like experiences that occur without an external stimulus. They are vivid and clear, with the full force and impact of normal perceptions, and not under voluntary control. They may occur in any sensory modality, but auditory hallucinations are the most common, followed by visual hallucinations. The person hears voices or sounds that no one else can hear, and see things no one else can see. The rule to diagnose an abnormality is simple. If someone exhibits manifestations that are not exhibited by normal people, then he can be considered for the diagnosis. And if he fulfills the criteria to a specific diagnosis, then he receives the diagnosis. Now let us see whether Mohammed exhibits some unusual manifestations that are not experienced by normal people, and whether these manifestations are known in medicine to be associated with a certain well-known diagnosis. Criterion A. Now let us consider criterion A of delusional disorder, the presence of delusions. Mohammed believed that he is the chosen one by the heavens to be the last and best messenger. And he said that God and angels pray for him. He associated his name with God in everything. Scientifically, this satisfies the presence of grandiose delusions. And think of this incident. In Medina, Mohammed with a group of his companions went to the Jews of Bani an-Nazir to ask them for financial help. The Jews welcomed Mohammed and agreed, but suddenly Mohammed left the meeting without even talking to his companions, who were surprised and astonished. They followed him and asked why did he leave so suddenly. He said 2 men of the Jews were conspiring against him and had the intent to kill him by throwing a stone on his head. How did you know? They asked. Gabriel came down from the heavens and told me. When he said it was a revelation from the heavens by Gabriel, who came to him with no one else seeing him, and Mohammed heard him while no one else even noticed a thing. They did not discuss this with him because they had a blind faith in his claims. This incident clearly is a classic and typical example of persecutory delusions and auditory hallucinations. It is a bizarre delusion, of course. The result was catastrophic for the Jews, who were besieged and kicked out of their homes due to a voice heard by a psychotic person with no one else hearing anything. Another incident happened in Bani Qurayza invasion. Mohammed saw Gabriel coming to him wearing an embroidered turban and riding on a mule with a saddle covered with a piece of brocade, and asked, "You have laid down your arms?" "By Allah, we angels have not laid them down yet, and I have just come from pursuing the enemy. God commands you, Mohammed, to go to Bani Qurayza. I am about to go to them to shake their stronghold, to terrorize Jews. So set out for them." This is a hallucinatory scene resulting in a secondary delusion. Life of Mohammed is full of referential delusions too. He believed people were making fun of him. As to jealousy delusions, they made him keep his wives inside the house. Criterion A is fulfilled when we treat Quran scientifically. Criterion B. Criterion A for schizophrenia is not met. Following is criterion A for schizophrenia. 2 or more of the following, each present for a significant portion of time during a month period, or less if successfully treated. At least one of these must be 1, 2, or 3. 1. Delusions. 2. Hallucinations. 3. Disorganized speech, example, frequent derailment, incoherence, or language anomalies. 4. Grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior. 5. Negative symptoms, namely, diminished emotional expression or avolition. In Mohammed's case, because his hallucinations were related to the theme of his delusion, the chosen one delusion. He has the delusions of being the God messenger, and his hallucinations were the voice of the angel giving him this message. The hallucinations of hearing the angel voice is associated with the delusion of being chosen by God to be the Savior and the greatest human being ever. We can say comfortably that criterion B for delusional disorder is met. Criterion C. This criterion is related to functioning. Mohammed's functioning was not grossly impaired, and he established a cult, defeated his opponents, and forced them to follow him. Apart from the impact of his delusions, which made him behave as the God-soul agent and lead people accordingly, his behavior was not grossly odd, exotic, or bizarre. Criterion D. Mohammed suffered from manic episodes. That happened in Mecca. We can infer that from the form of Makki Quran. It is written in short, crowding, racing sentences, showing pressured speech, and high degree of rhyming and punning, and exhibiting clang association, and occasional flight of ideas. This was brief, and we can see that when comparing the late pieces of Quran in Medina, where the form changed totally to prolonged sentences and paragraphs with very little, if any, clang, rhyming or punning. Though pressured speech is not enough to diagnose a mood disorder, but if we recall that Mohammed showed grandiosity in being the greatest man for whom God and angels pray, his hypersexuality, and presence of signs of distractibility and flight of ideas, then manic episodes can be detected. But a manic episode is not necessary for the diagnosis. This is just an exclusion criterion, and the absence of mood disorder supports the diagnosis of delusional disorder, and its short presence does not rule out the delusional disorder. Hence, criterion D is met. As to criterion E, though we can assume safely it is fulfilled, but whether fulfilled or not it won't make a big difference since our diagnosing process is retroactive and remote in time. So, it is obvious. Mohammed can be diagnosed with delusional disorder quite confidently. Therefore, scientifically speaking, Mohammed is a psychotic patient. And this can explain his unusual manifestations. And unless a proof is provided that such manifestations can take place normally, there is no other room for any different explanation.